This video will share with you the origin of the concept of the genius principle. And there are four key parts. The first part is the genius principle. And that simply is this: you once were a genius, but you lost it. Number two is the genius factor. That, simply put, is we know how to find it and how you can build on it. Number three is the genius portrait. And that portrait is important because it leads into number four, the genius process, the reinforcement and the reflection that goes into looking at what you can be at your best. The whole idea of the genius principle comes from a NASA study. I felt there was no better way to explain this to you than to go to the source, Dr. George Land. Now, if you're in the futurist business like I am, you know who George Land is. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2016. He has left a profound imprint on our understanding of how to look at systems, the future, and the whole idea of creativity. He is the originator of the assessment that I've shared with you before. So let's go to this TED Talk with Dr. George Land explaining the research behind what we call the genius principle. I've taken this presentation and shortened it to provide enough context, but to also dial into this one assessment. And then I'll come back and close this up for you.
What I want to do in the little time we have tonight is to share with you something, an idea, some knowledge that has been the most important thing in my entire life. And an idea that has me totally frustrated and incredibly optimistic at the same time about the future. We're now facing a period in history where no institution is not facing profound, turbulent, unpredictable change. And that's everywhere in the world. So what do we do? Because we have all these old answers, but they don't seem to be working the way they used to. A few years ago, about 60 of the leaders in industry in America got together and started a study to say, okay, with this new kind of world that we have, with the internet, with all the satellite communication, with telephony, there are many more telephones in the world than there are people at this point. What does America do? And I won't try to go through the whole study, but the result was, they said, there's only one possibility for us to succeed as Americans, to be competitive, and that is to innovate, and to innovate continuously. And that's really what I want to share, because we have been looking at what it is that's behind that process of innovation, creative thinking, what we can do with our brains, what is that, the possibilities of that resource that we all have in these heads of ours. The thing that changed everything for us in trying to understand creativity is that somebody from NASA came to us, the deputy director, and said, look, we have a lot of people working for us. We need some way to select the people that are the most creative so they can go on the teams that are facing the toughest problems. Can you give us some kind of an instrument, a test or something that we can give to find those people? But the idea emerged that, gee, we still don't know where creativity comes from. Is it that some people are born with it and others not? Or is it learned? Does it come from our experience in life? And the idea came up, this test is so simple. Why don't we give it to some children and see how they do? So we did. We created a sample of the American population with 1,600 children and started it out when they were about 5 years old. Now, here's a question I want to ask you. This is a test for the ability to look at a problem and come up with new, different, and innovative ideas. What percentage of those 5-year-olds fell into what you might call the genius category of imagination? 80, 90, wow. This is a great audience. There are some audiences that don't guess quite that high. 98%. We were pretty shocked. Some people like you would probably not be shocked. I suspect you've been 5-year-olds, so there you are. But the information was so astonishing, we decided to turn that into a longitudinal study, go back 5 years later and see how they're doing. They're now 10. What would you guess? Somebody came on very close. 30%. We decided to extend it for 5 more years. They're now 15. We have some pessimists out there. It was all the way up to 12. So you can see something of a trend here, right? But we have tested a lot of adults. And what would you guess? You're close. 2%.
Sir Ken Robinson goes even further to talk about this process. Where did we lose it? And we can look at education as one of the key areas that we've lost it. An education system built for the industrial era that taught us how to read, follow instructions, and to sit up straight and only speak when we were asked to speak. We've grown up learning how to conform and meet standards, but our uniqueness, that original element that allows us to function in that genius zone, has been trained out of us over time. It wasn't until 2000, when I was 45 years old, that I began to tap back into that original side of me. And it's been since that time that I've experienced incredible growth through hard times, but coming back more productive, happier, and enthusiastic, because I'm tapping back into what I've always known was there, but didn't know I could or had permission to function in that unique or original way. Now, the genius principle is we all had that genius element, that curiosity, that openness, that willingness to be original, to make mistakes, but learn through it. However, over the years, we lost it. Now, for us, we use a couple of different assessments to uncover a starting point to gaining back that genius factor that we have. We use the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and I also use the Seligman's Virtue or Character Strengths Assessment from the University of Pennsylvania. These are excellent starting points. You may have starting points yourself. I like to think of this as uncovering a cherished relic in your garage. For me, it was the old MGB GT. The hatchback sports car was one of my favorites. So imagine it has sat in the garage for 40 years, and you go in and you discover it's there. You take off the cover and find it's dusty and it's in bad repair, but the genius is still there, and all you need to do is polish it up, get the engine retuned, and you're ready to go. And then you hear that purr again, that sound that lets you know that it's back. And so my goal is to help you find that sound again that lets you know you're back, and you can rebuild that genius factor that's deep down inside of you. So stay tuned. Take care.